People in the US called him Archie Bunker. In 1995 though, Carroll O'Connor got a call that changed everything. Suddenly, the four-time Emmy winner was no longer in Hollywood. All of a sudden, TV's biggest star was going to court instead of being on set. He went up to drug sellers and talked to them. In 17 states he got bills passed, but what hurt America's favorite father figure so much that he quit the stage for good? You might be shocked by the answer. Her birthday is August 2, 1924, and she was born in Manhattan. His family had deep Irish Catholic roots. Edward, his dad, was a lawyer. Elise, his mother, worked as a teacher. Carroll was the middle child of 3 boys. One brother, Hugh, would die in a motorbike accident in 1961. Robert, the other one, became a psychotherapist in New York. The family put a lot of value on school. Because Carroll was raised with strong Irish and Catholic beliefs, they shaped his life and even the roles he played later on. Carroll grew up in Forest Hills, Queens, while the Great Depression broke up a lot of American homes. A spot away from cheap living. The family lived in a nice single-family home and his father's law business kept going strong. The streets in Forest Hills were kept clean, and the homes were big Tudor style. It was a planned neighborhood for the wealthy. The jobless rate across the country had reached 25%, but Carroll wasn't affected by it. He was always full. He never lost his house. That safety helped him stand out when he had to play working-class people years later. It wasn't just reading about the social gap that helped him understand it. He lived on one side of it while the rest of the country fell apart. Carroll's first few years of school weren't great. He skipped kindergarten and started first grade right away when he was 5 years old. He fell behind right away because of that jump. His mind wasn't ready for what was going to happen in class. His teacher said he asked too many questions that weren't related to the lesson. He was smart, but it was hard to teach him. He had already been held back once by the time he was 11. In his early years he finished school at Newtown High in Elmhurst. In literature and history he did okay, but he never stood out as a top student. Those problems made him feel like an outsider, but they also made him more aware of other people, which helped him become a great actress. For college, Carroll left Queens in 1941 and went to Wake Forest in North Carolina. He was only 17 years old. He had never been to the South before. But war broke out before he could settle down. Pearl Harbor was hit on December 7, 1941. Carroll wanted to do his job. In early 1942 he sent in an application to join the Naval Air Corps, but they turned him down. His teeth were bad. He was missing 3 molars and wasn't getting good enough marks. It hurt to be turned down. Men had to serve in the military back then, and Carroll didn't make the cut. He didn't give up though. He went to the Merchant Marine Academy, but that didn't last long either. He joined the National Maritime Union and became a merchant sailor in 1943. He went on a trip across the North Atlantic, the Mediterranean and the Caribbean in the last few years of the war. There were still German U-boats out there, and every trip was dangerous. But Carroll didn't give up. From the water he saw the war. That feeling of being in danger, being far away, and being alone stuck with him. He showed that raw truth when he played tough, worn-out roles like Archie Bunker later on. Things were different when he got back home in 1940. His father was in jail in Sing Sing for fraud. He used to be a well-known and respected lawyer in New York. That was something Carroll never told anyone else. The family didn't talk about the issue. They had a nice home in Forest Hills, Queens, and were an Irish Catholic family. Carroll was the middle child of 3 boys. One of his brothers became a doctor. They had 2 sons, Hugh, who died in a motorbike accident in 1961, and Robert, who became a doctor. Carroll could have gone in the same direction, maybe into law like his dad. But he changed his mind after the war, when his family was in a lot of pain. He didn't want what everyone else had. He got a job at the Irish Advocate, the newspaper that his family runs. It had been around since 1893. Irish Americans have been linked for almost 100 years. He wrote about events, went to Irish events, and kept his pen busy. People remembered seeing him at those events with a notebook in his hand, and his mother often sitting next to him. The job wasn't exciting, but it kept him grounded. It also helped him learn how to write and pay attention, which came in handy when he was on stage. In the late 1940s, Carroll did something else that no one saw coming. It's not true that he went to Montana State, but rather the University of Montana. He joined a fraternity, but at first he didn't study theater. He met Nancy Fields there too. She did lighting, makeup, and a lot of other things behind the scenes for student shows. She was smart, sure of herself, and interested in English and theater. They got along well. It was in her blood to be Crow-Indian, and she loved history. They got married in 1951 and were together all their lives. After many years they gave the university a huge gift that helped make it the center for the Rocky Mountain West. A collection of more than 600 old photos of Crow Indians, taken between 1895 and 1920, was also kept safe by Nancy for many years. Both of their work was important. In 1950, they packed up again. He left Montana this time to go to Dublin with his brother Hugh, who was going to school there to become a doctor. Carroll went to University College Dublin to learn more about Irish people and history. When he graduated in 1952, something bigger took place. He fell in love with the theater. On stage in Dublin, he went by the name George Roberts as a quiet way to remember a dying friend. He kept this choice with him as he played Shakespeare in small theaters in Ireland and Scotland, including the famous Gate Theatre. It wasn't like he was just another actor going through. The critics at the 1953 Edinburgh Festival liked it a lot. Someone said that his work was amazingly modern, even when he played parts from the past. But that name, George Roberts, wasn't around for long. 1954, the owner of an Irish theater told him to stop. The man told Carroll that he didn't want George Roberts' name to be at his company because he had worked with him before. Carroll gave up then, and with that, Carroll O'Connor was born again under his real name, which would become famous one day. In late that same year, when he got back to New York, truth hit him hard. People in Europe looked up to him. At home, he couldn't even get work. Since managers and casting directors turned him down, he felt like he wasn't there. He had to teach in public schools to make money to stay alive. He helped out as a teacher in the Bronx and Queens from 1955 to 1958. The kids didn't know who he was, but he would sometimes use Shakespeare to get their attention, turning the classes into little stages. He also went to school at the University of Montana and got a master's degree in teaching during this time. Even though he had a degree and wrote a thesis about Shakespeare and American politics, he couldn't move up in his job. He said those years as a teacher changed him years later. They taught him how to talk to real people who would later see some of themselves in Archie Bunker. In 1958, everything was different. It all began with a newspaper. His wife Nancy saw an ad for a strange new off-Broadway play based on Ulysses by James Joyce. Carroll didn't even want to try out. He almost gave up. She pushed him though. He went, and it worked. His part as Buck Mulligan was given to him by director Burgess Meredith. Ulysses in Nighttown was a big hit, which came as a surprise. It went on for 167 nights. The whole group got good reviews, but Carroll stood out. Later, actress Pauline Flanagan said that he made every scene more interesting. Everything changed because of that one part. He was offered a part in The Big Knife in 1959 after the play was over. He stopped being invisible all of a sudden. Carroll later said that Archie would not exist without Joyce and Nancy. He was ready for TV by 1960. On March 6 he made his movie debut as prosecutor Frederick Katzman in the Sacco Vanzetti story. It was a serious and difficult part. Nearly 27 million people watched it on NBC's Sunday Showcase. People said that Carroll's act had a lot of depth and tension. He didn't just read words. He showed both the good and bad sides of a powerful man. Offers began to come in. He had been in 8 different TV shows by the end of 1960. In October of that year, he played a Russian official in one show and a police officer in another. Casting directors liked his range. He was known as the character actor's character actor because he could play a lot of different roles, even though most people didn't know his name yet. After that, films came out. Carroll played 34 small parts between 1961 and 1970. In A Fever in the Blood 1961, his first big movie role, he was a strict judge. It led to bigger parts. He played a crazy general in Kelly's Heroes in 1970 and stole every scene. And made up the famous line, "Knock it off with those negative waves." He was no longer just playing important parts. It was easy for me to be funny too. During that 10 years he was in hit films like Hawaii with Max von Sydow, Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor, and In Harm's Way with John Wayne. He was almost cast as the skipper on Gilligan's Island and Dr. Smith, 2 big TV roles. In the movie Lost in Space, it didn't matter that he didn't get either. Carroll O'Connor went from being an unknown teacher to a well-known character by 1970. Carroll O'Connor had no idea that he would become one of the most recognizable faces on TV. In 1968, he was cast as a bigoted jerk named Archie in a pilot called Justice for All. The network turned it down. It was 1969 when a second pilot came. Those were the days. The same result. She didn't like the story anyway. He told the director Norman Lear that he would write it again himself. Lear could hire someone else if he didn't like that. No one thought the show would make it. ABC did well. O'Connor went to live in Europe. Then, out of the blue, CBS picked it up in 1970. It got a new name, Everyone in the Family. O'Connor got a phone call. He came back. In January 1971, the show aired. Ratings were slow at first, but they picked up quickly. It went off. It went to #1 in the US and stayed there for 5 years. It wasn't just the insults and yelling that made Archie Bunker so interesting. It was the pain that was really there. Carroll O'Connor made the character more real. He wasn't just mad, he didn't know what to do, and was afraid of change. He wanted to hold on to a world that was leaving him. As O'Connor put it, Archie's problem is how to deal with a world that is changing in front of him. People seemed to both love and hate him because he was so complicated. Archie was the one who yelled slurs, and the one who cried at a funeral. TV Guide put him at #5 all-time in 1999. He was #1 in 2005, beating out Lucy and Homer Simpson. It wasn't a safe show, as well as abortion, racism, the Vietnam War, and even menopause and impotence were talked about. Archie said everything wrong and called people colored and even worse things. It was different from anything else that people had seen on TV. Still, people in America watched. It was the most watched show in the country by the end of the first season. A bold person, O'Connor wasn't just on TV, they went on strike at CBS in 1972. Carroll wouldn't go across the queue of protesters. He stopped making things. He said, "I've been a union man all my life. I can't work with people who break strikes." The network went crazy, but he didn't give up. It was on strike for almost 2 months. He went back on his own terms when it was over. In the same year, things got worse between O'Connor and Norman Lear. They fought over stories, jokes, and who should direct the show. O'Connor thought Lear asked him if he was telling the truth. It seemed like Lear always thought O'Connor was sad. The script readings all started with the same complaint. "It does not work. He was right sometimes." It was sometimes fear, but the stress made them brilliant. They brought O'Connor back even though he quit the show in season 5 and missed 3 episodes. They had to. Without him, the show would not be able to go on. Carroll O'Connor asked for a lot in 1977. Never again will there be live crowds or taped shows like plays. He wanted a movie. He wanted power. "A lot less stress is felt when working with film," he said. The producers gave in even though it was a big change. He was one of the most respected stars of his time because he had that much power. At the 30th Emmy Awards in 1979, he got his 4th award for Best Actor in a Comedy Series. Some big stars that were up against him were Alan Alda, Hal Linden, John Ritter, and Henry Winkler. In his victory speech, O'Connor said in a humble way that he had won this award because of other awards he had won in the past. He also said, "This Emmy is for all those other Emmys. Without them, I couldn't win this one." Even stranger is the fact that O'Connor first thought the show would not do well. Because he was so sure it would fail, he asked for a return ticket to Rome in his contract. He planned to go back to Italy after the plan failed. Instead, for 5 years in a row, All in the Family was the most watched show in the United States. And O'Connor's part as Archie Bunker became the one people would always remember. Over time, it became harder to tell the difference between an actor and a character. Archie and Carroll O'Connor were not at all alike. He taught, wrote, and was a liberal, but no one could tell the difference. People on the street called out, "Hey Archie," his picture was used in CBS ads, but his real name wasn't shown. He felt it. He said that people are forgetting about Carroll O'Connor. Even so, he never really disliked the figure. He told him that he might like him if they met. He felt bad for him. One last thing showed that Lear and O'Connor were at peace. Ever since they fought and had trouble coming up with ideas, Lear sent him a letter. After many years, that message was the only thing on O'Connor's desk when someone came to visit him. There were no awards or plots, just that letter. Proof that even the worst relationships can end politely. Carroll O'Connor never got over the loss he felt in 1961. Hugh, his younger brother, had died in a motorbike accident on a wet road. It hurt Carroll all the time, just as her acting job was getting better. When Carroll and his wife adopted a boy in Rome in 1962, they gave him the name Hugh to honor their brother. It was more than just an honor, it was a bond. Carroll kept his brother's old leather jacket and medical books in his dressing room while the movie All in the Family was being filmed. Hugh O'Connor was really only 6 days old when Carroll and his wife brought him home. In Rome at the time, Carroll was working on the movie Cleopatra, which was a crazy time with stars like Elizabeth Taylor. But that moment when he held his son was better. After trying for years but not being able to have kids, this moment changed everything. He didn't work for 3 days so he could spend time with his son. There was beauty and sadness in the beginning of something great. When Hugh turned 16, everything changed once more. Hodgkin's cancer was found in him. The methods were very harsh. She had 2 surgeries and 28 rounds of chemotherapy. The pain was too much to bear. Doctors gave him strong painkillers, and he finally turned to smoking weed to deal with the sickness. That was the first sign that something was wrong. There were soon more than just medications. Hugh was using cocaine by the age of 18. Over the course of 10 years, Carroll tried 8 different rehabs, but nothing worked. It didn't help that he hired Hugh for his TV show in the middle of the night and moved the group to Georgia. There were drugs everywhere. Even on the set, Carroll was in bad health himself while he was trying to save his son. He went in for a regular checkup in 1989. His heart was in bad shape, the doctors said. He had emergency heart bypass surgery the next day. Then things got complicated. He had to have a second surgery 10 days after the first one because his stomach got worse. He quit smoking 2 packs a day and spent weeks getting better. He came out of it thinner but more motivated. Hugh stayed sober during this time to help his dad. It didn't last though. In 1998, Carroll would need surgery again to keep her from having a stroke. Carroll looked out for other people even though his own life was falling apart. He went out of his way to protect Howard Rollins, who was also a junkie and one of his co-stars. He pushed the studio to set up counseling on site and even paid for a number for cast and crew who were having a hard time. Carroll pushed hard to keep Rollins on the show when he missed work. Addiction wasn't something he could fight because he was going through it with his son. In 1988 changed who he was on TV. He stopped being Archie Bunker and changed his name to Bill Gillespie, the police chief of a town with a lot of race tension. Carroll got a second chance at work and got to play a man who could change. Gillespie wasn't always good, he had flaws, was tough, and took a long time to change. He did change though. Shaped the character into someone who could stand up to unfairness and his own bias over the course of 8 seasons and 147 episodes. Behind the scenes he built something too. Carroll went back to work stronger after his surgeries. He was in charge of producing the show, directed 4 shows, wrote 20 and edited almost 50. He even wrote the words to a few shows. He was no longer just playing, he was in charge of everything. When NBC dropped the show, worked behind the scenes to get CBS to pick it up. It worked. Even though the show ran for years, the storm at home never stopped. Carroll made up the part of Officer Lonnie Jameson just for his son. He believed that giving Hugh a steady job would assist him in becoming sober. Hugh's role on the show changed as he went from being a patrol cop to acting chief. Off camera though, Hugh was still having a hard time. On March 28, 1995, just after 1:30 p.m., Carroll O'Connor picked up the phone. Hugh, his 32-year-old son, was on the other end. The day should have been good. Hugh was not happy as he talked about his 8th wedding date with his wife. It was heavy. Then she said the words that broke Carroll's heart. "I'm not going to cap myself today." Carroll went cold. Then he begged Hugh, "Why do you say those things? I'd like to come get you." But Hugh had already made up his mind. "Pops, I have to leave now. Thanks." The call ended, but Carroll kept hearing that goodbye. He called back over and over, but no one answered. As the minutes went by, fear turned into panic. He called the Los Angeles cops around 2 p.m. He told them that his son was thinking about killing himself and had guns in the house. Time was running out. The police moved quickly. Near the ocean, a SWAT team circled Hughes's home on Hillside. They tried to get in touch with him for 3.5 hours. A single gunshot could be heard inside just before 4 p.m. It was too late when the police finally got there. Hugh was not there. In the end, Carroll said that the cops got there just in time to hear the shot that killed him. Hugh had been having a hard time since he was 16. He had been choked by drugs for half of his life. Carroll took him in as a baby while they were shooting Cleopatra in Rome. Hugh had a lot of love, chances, and a spot on his dad's TV show, In the Heat of the Night. It wasn't enough though. Hugh had been to 3 rehabs. He tried very hard, but the addiction always came back harder. In his last days, he was nervous and hallucinating, and he was sure that people could hear him through the walls. Carroll suggested that Hugh go back to rehab, but Hugh couldn't do it. He was worn out. He gave up. In the same evening, Carroll met with media outside of his son's house. His face was blank with pain, and his eyes were empty. He could have kept quiet, but he spoke up. People all over the world heard what happened and what drugs did to his son. Carroll said he was smart, funny, and good-looking, but he couldn't get rid of the monkey on his back. There wasn't a script for the speech. The father was telling the truth because he was hurt. It was painful to feel, but it was also a warning to all parents. Then he called the person he thought had hurt his son Harry Persigin. It was Carroll who called him a partner in crime. She told the cops about Persigin 5 days before Hugh died because she said he was still bringing drugs to Hugh's house. After Carroll's public statement, cops searched Persigin's apartment and found $1,700 in cash, cocaine, and drug paraphernalia. He was caught that same night. He was later given a year in prison in 1996 for giving Hugh cocaine. He didn't stop there though. According to Persigin, Carroll slandered him in 1997 and caused a lot of damage to his life. It was $10 million. Carroll chose not to give up. He was happy about the case and said it would make people pay more attention to the problem. "I'm going to sue him for a lot of money," he said. "Just for the attention." The trial made people feel bad. Hughes's wife Angela spoke in court. Carroll also did it. The jury paid attention. Then they all agreed on Carroll's case. Someone on the jury said, "I would have done what he did." Or even worse, someone else called Persigin a murder partner, cried when the ruling came in. "I knew a jury would back me up," he said. "And you did." He didn't stop in court though. Carroll did something about his pain. He spoke for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America all over the country. He talked to parents straight up. He said, "This is Hugh" to the camera. "This is my kid. He began using drugs when he was 16 and I didn't like it." In a different speech, he told politicians that they should go after drug dealers as well as drug users. He said that we need to cut down on the number of people to whom people have to say no. People paid attention to his voice because it carried the weight of loss. In 1997, in part because Carroll pushed them, the Drug Dealer Civil Liability Act, which is also known as the Hugh O'Connor Memorial Law, was passed in California. It let the families of drug sellers be sued in civil court. Carroll stood next to the politicians as the bill was passed. He said it was a way to hit them in the pocket. Not only in California did that law stay in place, it was passed by 17 other states in different forms. In the end, it became his permanent gift. Not only as an actor, but also as a dad who was sad and wouldn't keep quiet. When Carroll talked to Larry King, he said something simple that hit right to the heart. "Every day I think about him. He didn't want to get over it and never did." He later said, "Nothing will give me peace," but he found a reason to live. He told them that after the trial, the judge told them they could go after these guys, so they will. He fought against what killed Hugh for the rest of his life. Dealers, drugs, and silence. Carroll was a lot of things though. He opened a shop to fix up old cars in Newbury Park in 1996. He had dreamed about it with Hugh before. He put over $100,000 into it. He went there once a week and worked with a group of skilled restorers. A shiny black 1938 Delage that was made for the 1939 New York World's Fair was one of his favorite cars. He said, "I think you would have liked this place." It would make him laugh. It wasn't just a store, it was a memorial to his son and a way to honor him. In another big way, Carroll and his wife Nancy helped others. They gave the University of Montana $1 million. The money helped start a study center at his old school that became a major source for information about history and regional development. The Lewis and Nancy Fields O'Connor Center for the Rocky Mountain West is what the school called it. It was more than just a building, it was a way for their names and Hughes's to live on in culture and education. Carroll went back to that same university to teach in the last few years of his life. It was called Writing the Movie. His students adored him. He didn't use a book to teach. He taught for a long time in Hollywood, on Broadway, with Archie Bunker, and as an executive producer. His class felt like a real place to write because of him. He shared stories, harsh criticism, and lessons he had learned from both happiness and sadness. He kept showing up even though he had health problems, like surgeries and even losing a toe. Because teaching was important. It was important to pass it on. Carroll's last movie role was as a kind old grandfather in Return to Me, which came out in 2000. The movie was about love and loss. It felt close to home. It was heartfelt, simple, and quiet. His health got worse that same year. Diabetes, problems with circulation, and surgeries. It was clear that he was tired, but he never stopped working or moving forward. Then on June 21, 2001, Carroll O'Connor passed out at home. After only an hour, he died of a heart attack. He was 76 years old. Rob Reiner, Sally Struthers, and Martin Sheen were among the famous people who came to his funeral. They had loved him on and off the screen. On his tombstone there is a memorial for Hugh both as a father and a son. In his honor, TV Land showed a series of family-friendly shows. Nancy, his wife, carried on their work until she died in 2014. But the real tribute to Carroll isn't shown on the screen. It's in the people he tried to keep safe. In the laws he helped get passed. In the adults who are speaking out now. In the note he left behind. Keep your kids away from drugs. Do whatever you can to keep them alive.